Welcome back to our conference. I am so pleased to have Eli Marienthal with us. Eli is a lifelong learner and educator. He is the co-director of Back to Earth and a founding faculty member of WILD, where he guides wilderness rites of passage adventures for teens and young adults. He is trained through the Tracking Project in Corrales, New Mexico, a nonprofit led by John Stokes devoted to peacemaking, nature awareness, and cross-cultural respect. He is an NOLS alumnus and a certified wilderness first responder. Eli holds bachelor's degrees and a master's degree in comparative literature and international development studies from Brown University, and he is an all but dissertation PhD candidate in the geography department at UC Berkeley. He has conducted research in Haiti, India, and the United States. Eli is also a poet, songwriter, and spoken word performer. He is a former Youth Speaks Slam champion and a National Youth Slam Team member. As a young person, he worked extensively in regional theater, including at Berkeley Repertory Theater, ACT, and the Magic Theater, as well as in film and television. Notable credits include The Iron Giant, Slums of Beverly Hills, and American Pie 1 and 2. Find him at backtoearth.org. Eli, thank you for giving us your time today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you work in this sacred territory of youth outdoor education and rites of passage mentoring. You offer wilderness immersion experiences and also mentoring circles during the school year. I want to begin by acknowledging with a lot of gratitude that my own son has had 2 amazing immersion excursions with you. And so I would not only be excited about your work anyway, but as a parent, I feel a really tremendous gratitude for what you do.
Thanks.
I'm, on the one hand, totally inspired by what you're doing and grateful. And then also, given the values that you and I share in common, I'm really sad sometimes that so few youth today are accessing the kind of nature immersion and rites of passage that you're offering. So we can see if our conversation ends up talking about what might your vision be of expanding what you're doing, whether you're the person who does that or whether we get to see lots of people do that. But anyway, I thought we'd begin by me just asking you, what's on your mind lately about young people and experiences of nature?
Well, thank you for the introduction. And I love your son. And he's such a great example of why we do this and why it feels so meaningful to have the opportunity to get young people into the natural world. You know, he is such a beautiful example of a young man who showed up with a lot of energy and a good heart. And what I have witnessed in him is a coming into himself, an ease, a confidence, a softening, and a simultaneous strengthening. And that is what I have found for myself, having a life that transpires in the wilderness. And it's the thing that I see for so many young people. So what is on my mind sort of always with the young people and the nature is that having a chance to go out and be immersed in the natural world is an opportunity to know ourselves, you know, to know something about ourselves, not just to harvest it and bring it back to our real lives, but to discover that our real lives, our realest selves, our most authentic beings actually sometimes find themselves most eloquently articulated in the non-verbal terrain of having a conversation with the natural world that occur when we are far from the handrails of home and the familiar patterns and triggers and guardrails, and have a chance to experience ourselves in an unfiltered way. And so that is what I want so much for the young people who come into this program, is to learn to love the world beyond themselves, but in so doing, to see themselves more clearly, to see their relationship to the substrate that is actually feeding them all the time and sustaining them all the time. And in that way, once we start to have a clearer picture of who we really are in relationship to the world around, there are aspects of our being that can come alive, which I think are just intractably turned in on themselves until we have a chance to sort of see ourselves in that perspective.
Yes, yes. I so much appreciate how you're talking about the two sides of this: relationship to self and relationship to the larger world, especially in its natural form. And then the self-knowledge and the ability to engage and to see the whole picture, the oneness and the interrelationship that arises out of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the major things you do is summertime 1 to 2 week wilderness immersions in Yosemite, as far as I know, or in that region in the California mountains.
Yeah.
So obviously there's really a lot to be said for the intensive immersion and the technology-free zone. So you're welcome to talk more about how that plays out. I would also really like to hear you talk about the school year mentoring program, though, because although that's less intensive, I would imagine, and not so immersive in nature, that type of thing is more accessible to people. So maybe tell us about one or both of those further.
Sure. So the summer program is called WILD, and it's an acronym for Wilderness Immersion and Leadership Development. And the wilderness immersion part is very obvious. And the leadership development is pretty much everything else that isn't just going and being out there. And it's funny that you mentioned the technology free, because I know it is so on so many people's minds. And just a little note for those out there who are super freaked out about the degree to which our young people are plugged in and tuned in and addicted to their devices, because it's all certainly true. But I do like to note that the damage is more surface than I think we sometimes fear. And I get to see that because what I witness is that we put our phones away in the van and we head out, and it turns out the great good news that all of those faculties and capacities for relating sans the technology are fully online, maybe the wrong metaphor, but working just wonderfully. And then we come back and it's kind of amazing. We all do it, you know, it's like, don't think about our phones, and we're delighted to not think about them for 10 days. And then we get to the van, and then all of a sudden there they are again. And you can't put them down, and have checked our email 4 times before we even get back to the bay. But I do get to see that, in fact, the love of life unmediated by the devices is well and good under there, and just needs the opportunity to arise and experience itself. Which
Yes.
is one of the reasons why this is so crucial, because actually getting a reset like that, actually having a moment to detox for even 10 days, I think can be good for the nervous system. Yeah.
Yeah, and simply just good for young people to realize that they can do it and they were happy and their social lives did not fall apart. So I think just having them experience that experiment with an okay outcome and not a disastrous outcome is really beneficial.
Indeed. So those trips are these huge adventures, where we really drop into some very altered space, where we are in a time-space continuum that is pretty unfamiliar to most, and the culture that we are building together, the ways we're talking to each other, the expectations, the rhythms and routines of the day are such that within a couple of days, you can feel like you've been there for weeks and you can hardly remember that there was a time other than this. They are fully immersive, and for the older guys, that is the 15 to 19-year-olds, the program really orients around a solo ceremony that happens in the sort of last third of the trip. And that is a chance for young people to fast and sit quietly by themselves for about 36 hours, 2 nights and 1 day. And it's held in a ceremonial container that begins and ends all together. And then they have this very profound, often, experience of encountering themselves, doing something that they would have thought, even right up until the moment of doing it, that maybe it was impossible for them. And so they come home filled up. They come home with this sense of themselves, their own ability, their capacity, so much to say, and sitting out there and all of a sudden realizing, I love my mom so much, and I love my grandparents, and I can't believe I'm not grateful for my school, and so much has been offered to me, and I want to tell this person how much I love them. I want to tell that person how grateful. I want to tell that person sorry. So they come back, and there is just all of this juice for their lives. And we have all had the experience of coming out of something big, really excited, make some big proclamations. I am never going to ... Every single morning I will ... from now until forever, ever. And it's just not that easy. The truth is that we come back to our lives, and more or less the people who we left behind are expecting to pick up with us right where we left off, even if they don't want to. That's the real irony sometimes. Parents want this for their children because they think they want their children to have some radical and transformative experience, and their kid steps off the van, and the parents step in and go back to engaging them as if nothing has changed. No fault to anyone. It's how we are. And so the year-round mentoring circles evolved as a way to keep participants tapped in to some of those experiences that they had out there. Basically to say, we have the peak experience to break something open, to throw the door wide open, and to get beyond ourselves. And then there is the process of the rubber meeting the road of one's real life, where there's school and friendships and parents and siblings and all of the other dynamics, pressures, tensions, stresses, habits, expectations that made it so necessary to go out and have a big wilderness immersion, rite of passage experience in the first place. And so the year-round mentoring program is a way to just tap in, stay connected, That's right. We're not in the mountains, but we can still come together in the morning and offer our gratitude. We can still stay tapped into some of these core practices that we can bring home with us. And it's just easy, especially at that age, at 15, 16, 17, to have a peak experience, and then it just sort of drifts back into the, yeah, it was a cool thing I did. And from the beginning, our interest has not been in sort of um, blowing people's socks off, giving them a big experience, and then sort of saying, okay, cool. Well, good luck with that.
Now that's over.
Now that's over. Our interest is in the long-term relationship and in the long-term outcomes, in working with young people to harvest what is most precious in those big experiences and then be able to apply it in their everyday lives. And so the mentoring circle happens. We get together in cohorts once a month. We spend the day out on the land. We work some skills. We do our morning practice just like we do in the mountains. And they get to continue to be immersed, if only for one Saturday a month, in the kind of culture that we build together out there.
That sounds really valuable. I'm glad to understand that better. And it sounds like that is something that people anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world could replicate a little more easily. For you to take youth into the wilderness, I mean, you make it sound easy, but I couldn't do that. That's a massive endeavor. I'm really intrigued by the monthly gatherings because it's easier to create that.
Well, if I could just say something about finding myself being the person who takes people into the wilderness. Everybody that I know wants some way to be of service. That is the unifying prayer that I hear from, really, I think from pretty much everybody that I'm close to. Most folks have a desire to be of service that is greater than the obvious means of doing it. And so I just want to note that it is by the grace of creation that I was offered a way to do it, a way to be helpful. And it's not the way, and it's not the best way. And it really is not so separate and distinct, I think, from the ways that many of the people that you're talking to as part of this conference are trying to be of service, to mend the hoop of the human family, to bring us closer to the earth so that we might pay enough attention to realize that the earth is alive, that there are lots of ways to do it. And each of us is doing our best to find the available avenue for us, the thing that suits our skills, our capacities, our proclivities. Yes. And this happens to be mine.
I'm curious to hear you reflect a little bit more on the disposition or the temperament that you bring to this work with youth, because teaching, mentoring, it's very complex, and you're creating a container, you're holding a space, you're trying to give them independence while also keeping them physically and emotionally safe. And I think there's a lot more that you provide there than people might initially understand. How do you think about the disposition or energy or temperament that you bring to this work?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that what I bring to this work is a desire to be transparent and honest with the young people that I work with. I remember being a young person and feeling allergic to being condescended to. I was a precocious young person. I always had older friends, and I wanted to be taken seriously. I wanted to be listened to, and I wanted to be included in a real way. And that remains a through line in the way that I approach developing mentor relationships. So that doesn't mean, like in any relationship, that we, spill our guts on the first meeting, but it is to say that I find I am most useful when I am sharing where I really come from, when I am role modeling the kind of vulnerability and presence and heart openness and lack of certainty that I want for them. And so I think it's a rare treat in this world to have a grown-up who really cares about you, who is really attentive to what's going on for you, and also doesn't have an agenda for you in a certain kind of way. It's not outcome related. I'm not a coach, and I'm not their guidance counselor or a parent. And it gives me the spaciousness to see them in their questioning, in their grasping, in their discovering, and to show up and offer what I can without such a need for it to turn out any particular way. And I find that it just feels the best to me when I am being myself. When I'm not pretending that, one of the things that we talk about all the time is, not wasting our time. Guys, I say guys, we actually have a young women's program now. I'm still a little bit accustomed to this being primarily a program for teenage boys and young men. But one of the ongoing conversations is about procrastination, is about doing the things you said you were going to do, is about following through. And how much less compelling to be instructed on being a person of your word and doing what you say, than to say, oh man, here's what it looks like here. Here are the pieces that I really got it together here. I pay my bills on time. I set up my systems, and I treat my time well, and I don't mess around and watch a lot of terrible television. And then here's the ways that I am also wrestling. I am also struggling, and we are in this together. And those are the relationships that I feel can really be of most benefit, because teenagers these days are so have such a nose for the false, for the condescending, for the contrived.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said. And I was thinking, as you were expressing that, about what the schooling experience for kids would be like if more teachers felt safe being more vulnerable and more openly human and in integrity, and if more parents did, because I think we're in this interesting time where a lot of people have been experimenting with moving out of some of those older, kind of harsher, more hierarchical adult young person dynamics. But in a lot of ways, we haven't moved out of those hierarchical dynamics. And I'm sure that that's one of the things that the kids who spend time with you really love the most, is you're a safe adult, but not insisting on hierarchy and willing to be real with them, which, as you said, they really want.
Indeed. And it creates a culture when we are there together, where there are fewer rules, and there's no punishment at all. And yet we can all really ask for what we need, because the mutual respect is the shared expectation.
Yeah.
And I would say that that has been, if I track myself over the 8 or so years that I've been doing this, I would say I do a lot less nitpicking. I am a lot more open to them working out their stuff, to talking with each other the ways they like to and need to talk to each other, and setting expectations that are like, I'm going to let you rap that SoundCloud nonsense at full volume while we walk in this beautiful place, although I wish that you would walk quietly and talk to the trees, but it's like, that's not what's happening. But when we get to camp and it's time to do our silent sit spot, I'm going to look everybody in the eyes and be like, we had our fun, right? And now it's time to drop in. Are we good? Are we ready? And so much less browbeating and arm twisting. And boy, it has made my work a lot more joyful to me, and I think to everybody else as well.
Yeah. Well, because the only rules that you insist on are a few really important ones. Otherwise, there's freedom and self-determination, which everybody wants, and teenagers certainly do. You're going to be such a good dad, Eli. I know you're already a dad, but you're so prepared to be a parent.
I feel like I have a 10-month-old daughter, and I do feel like everything I have ever done in my life was preparation for being her papa.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
Do you have a vision at this point in time of expanding this work in any way? Or is your focus right now more on continuity with the amazing things you've already built?
Well, we are expanding Wild in a pretty big way this year, and it's grown rather organically. This will be our 8th season, and it was like seasons 1 and 2 we did 2 trips, and then season 3 was 3 trips, and 4 like that, and then season 6 we jumped all the way from 5 to 7, and season 7 we jumped all the way from 7 to 10, and this year we are offering 16 trips. So it's a pretty significant expansion for us. And the conversation for us about growing has always happened in the context of what we offer really being ceremony. And it is not hard to find qualified people who have trained to do outdoor education. That is an established program in many places, and there are lots of places that you can go, different styles and different schools of thought, but generally to learn how to be with young people in particular outdoors, that's something that you can find folks to do. But we are doing so much more than that. And what we came to was the culmination of mine and my partner Jesse's whole life experience up to that point. All of the teachers that we'd met, all of our own wandering and wondering, all of our own dead ends and backtrackings, and it was really a point of arrival to say, yeah, I feel like we can offer this in a good way. We were 28, 29, say, yeah, we are far enough away and we have learned enough that we can take some 15-year-olds out and really offer them something useful. And when I think back to 8 years ago and what we were putting out there then to now, it's astounding. It's the same program, sort of, but it has grown with us. And nothing has stretched us more or been more instructive or more of an opportunity to deepen our prayer than doing the work itself. And so it's always been this this tension between, on the one hand, wanting to offer it to more people, make it more widely available. There's obviously a huge demand for it. Our trips are always full, and we have thought about growing faster sooner. And in the end, the feeling has always been of wanting to keep it pretty close to keep it at a scale where we can feel really sure and really involved that everybody who is leading one of these trips, we know in that ceremonial capacity.
Yes.
We really trust that they are not going to, take the kids out and not really have the personal wherewithal. There just is no formula for it. There's no recipe, and you can't say, yeah, and then you'll gather in a circle and what, and that ability to drop into a circle and feel what is being asked for. Feel, does this need to move really quickly, or do we actually need to settle here and really let this take a long time? Yeah. Someone just said something that is obviously rippling in hard ways through the group. Do we need to break and let everybody go to sleep and return to that in the morning? Or do we need to go right to that and bring it out into the open and talk about it? And sometimes in an experience this big, when people hit their edges, they really can have a hard time. Mm-hmm. And the quality of the counsel, the quality of the reflection that they get back in that moment of hardship is a matter of real emotional and psychic and spiritual safety and well-being. Yes. And so we have not wanted to grow beyond the network of guides and collaborators who we came to know either because they joined us as seconds and there was good rapport, or because they come through other communities where they are extremely well vetted and we've really had a chance to build with them. So it's been incremental, and we are here at the front end of what is a big and exciting and kind of scary moment of expansion for us.
Yes, that all makes perfect sense, because there is a point of growth beyond which it becomes institutionalized, or as we see, I mean, I don't mean to be hard on education as an institution. My kids have all been schooled in the systems, but as we see in a bigger school, like a high school, for example, it's not possible for there to be oversight over whether all of the teachers are bringing a quality experience to the kids. And your endeavor demands, for so many reasons, that this be a trustworthy, intuitive, deeply thoughtful, and caring experience. So yeah, I think it totally makes sense that there's a point beyond which you would not want to grow. Although I was thinking, as you were saying that, you have so much expertise that would allow you to go around the country and teach other people to replicate this in other locations, because this isn't the kind of endeavor that you plan 3 months in advance and take kids out into the wilderness. As you've indicated, there's a lot of personal capacity and organizational capacity that supports this.
And we did do, for many years, lots of school programming. So we worked with several schools where we were kind of holding the nature connection, culture building piece for them. And we would sometimes start the year with a 4 or 5 day camping trip. We would close the year with a 4 or 5 day camping trip. And we got to really be sort of woven into the rhythm of the school year. And one of the things that was very important to us in those relationships was, the schools brought us in to introduce a morning practice. But what we really wanted was for teachers to feel sufficiently connected to that morning practice that they could take it back with them and bring it into their school week if they wanted to. so that the culture of the school could grow and we weren't something external dropping in. And so that kind of institutional capacity building is of great interest to me.
Yes.
And this year, our guiding collective is up to, I think, 12 people. And so for the first time, we have reached a moment where we can't just have everything be a one-on-one conversation. So we are convening our whole crew for 3 days of building and training this spring. And I'm very excited for exactly that, this first experiment in bringing our people together, all of whom are very skilled already, many of whom have guided for us in the past, but starting to codify a little bit more what it is that we are hoping for our participants to get out of the program and what that demands of us. Not just what are we going to, what programming are we going to bring forward, but how are we going to conduct ourselves?
Beautiful, beautiful. I know you've spent most of your life, maybe even all of your life, living on a regular basis in an urban or suburban setting, at least as far as I understand. I mean, you currently live in the Bay Area, which, like the city or metro area where I live, is urbanized and also has a lot of access to nature. But I'm wondering if you want to speak to how you maintain your own connection to Earth. You don't live in the wilderness, for example. You live in the kind of place where a lot of people nowadays live. And I think a lot of people are working on that for themselves. How do I feel connected to this planet, to the plants, to the animals, when, if I'm lucky, I do have trees and birds and squirrels around me, but also a lot of concrete and cars and asphalt. What's that like for you?
Well, when I feel most connected is probably with my eyes closed and with my consciousness moving out to touch and greet the world around me. And the Qigong teacher who I studied with for many years, says that consciousness can travel from the very center of ourselves to the edge of the void at the outer limits of the universe faster than the speed of light, and gather everything in between. And so there is no substitute for getting your feet on the earth. It is an excellent idea to make a regular habit of it. If you can, it is a wonderful thing to grow a garden and have some plants that you are familiar with and that you like to go out and visit, and who you are in enough relationship to notice when they are doing well and when they are not doing well. There's no substitute for the real thing. And yet, wherever we happen to find ourselves, we are always able to close our eyes and be still and reach out from the center of ourselves and move out and touch and connect. And for me, it's easier sometimes to remember to go stand in my backyard and put my feet on the earth than it is for me to remember to sit quietly and close my eyes and say thank you. And so that's the piece of it that I try to keep at the forefront.
Yeah, I know. Even those of us who are really focused on being in relationship with the natural world and our planet and the plants and the animals, even we forget, get busy, get drawn in by the tasks and whatever's on the computer.
And it's just it bears saying that that tending a relationship with the natural world is not a theoretical thing. It, like any relationship, actually requires the time, and thinking that it is a good idea to do it is not the same thing as doing it. Knowing that it nourishes us to do that is not the same thing as doing it. And so, being honest with ourselves, as in all things, but just being honest with ourselves about, am I actually making that a priority in my life? Am I actually taking the time, or am I letting my awareness that it would be a good thing be a weak substitute for actually doing it?
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
So you've personally invested a lot of time, a lot of training and immersion in the development of your own skills and practices, and then conveying that to youth. I'm curious, if you look ahead, say, to the rest of this century, and you optimistically believe that more and more people are really cultivating a connection to this planet and a caring relationship, what does that look like to you, or how do you see that unfolding?
Wow, rest of the century is an unimaginable time scale to me.
Yeah, sorry, I trained as a
Oh,
historian,
no,
so
no.
I tend to think in centuries and millennia.
But
You don't have to.
But the question of where this ship is headed at the time frame of even 40 or 50 years feels so poignant right now, that to even let the mind momentarily drift beyond that is actually kind of a relief to consider. I had an experience recently where I was with a group of friends, many of whom have small children. We were all together having dinner at someone's house, and ages 6 months to 3 years. And as the night wore on and we were circulating, it is just the custom of this group of people to be very involved in each other's children's lives. It's not sort of sitting back watching my kid play and intervening if my kid is having a tantrum or breaking something. It is an expectation amongst this group of friends that everybody is free to intervene, to play with. There is a sense of shared responsibility and shared love. We really adore each other's children. And that is what I would like to see more of. It's funny. I think that one of the best things that we offer as a program is that we really earnestly love the people who participate in it. We see the folks who show up quite literally as prayers answered, because that is our primary marketing strategy. It's like, Creator, I don't know where they come from, but find them, bring them, get them to sign up, let them know about us.
Perfect.
And it works.
Yes.
It works every
yes,
time.
It does.
And so by the time we meet them, we feel so already so invested. And it's the nature of what we're doing. It's like, that's why we are the people doing this work, because that feels available to us. It's like, yes, I can really love that person. And sometimes I come back, from a trip like this, and I'll tell a parent, like, oh man, I love your kid. And they will look at me sort of like, well, that's kind of a weird thing to say.
Teachers should say that.
Huh?
Yeah. I mean, I wish more teachers could say that, though. I mean, I think we need this level of really seeing the young person.
Yeah, and being like, and I feel invested in your son's life. I really we have gone through something together, you know, and I am, they matter to me, you know, and the other side of it, which doesn't need to be said because we've already been on this trip, is, you know, thank you to the families. Thank you so much for trusting us enough and giving us the time and space to be part of your child's life in this very meaningful and intimate kind of way of sharing a grand adventure in the wilderness. And that's what I want for the people. I know it sounds so humble, you know, so small in the scale of the problems that we are facing, the challenges to the continuation of life at all that seem imminent. But what do I want this spreads? I want for there to be more places where young people have relationships with their slightly olders and their quite a bit olders and their all the way elders, in which there are relationships of care and of knowing and of love that are, you know, that have some teeth to them, that don't just exist because for the 10 days that you're on a program, but really persist in life, you know, where the nature of the relationships with grown-ups that young people have are not all, well, this is my counselor and this is my coach and these are my parents, these are my friends' parents, but where there are real opportunities for young people to have relationships that are meaningful and substantive.
Yes.
Grown-ups in their lives.
Yeah, I don't think that's small at all, actually. I mean, it's reminding me as you speak about the indigenous concept of all my relations, which we have to go back to, or the relations will be here on planet Earth, but we will not. And helping people, young people, to learn that with you, and then with other people on a trip or in the monthly mentoring circle, and with the earth and the soil and the plants and the animals. I mean, that's everything. In a nutshell, that's the only thing that's going to let us save ourselves and continue here and come to what this conference hopes will be a higher and wiser level of flourishing. So I really honor the wise and deep way that you're cultivating the microcosm of that.
Thank you. Well, all by the grace of our teachers, you know, and the olders and elders in our lives who were generous with us, you know, who opened their hearts and basically said, yeah, if we could save you a little bit of time, you know, and say, if you don't do what we say, you will go to hell or you will be lost forever. They just said, hey man, I see you. You're doing great. I have some counsel for you that might save you quite a lot of time.
Yeah.
Really, to get where you're going. Like, I see where you're trying to go and it's good, but could I help you out here? And so we're really very grateful to our teachers, you know, for having been generous with us like that, and that's all we're trying to do down the line as well.
Yes. Well, I think you're doing an extraordinary job of that, and thank you so much for sharing your insights and experience with us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
This has been a presentation of New Earth One Network, your home for New Earth living. Access information, education, and videos on living from the heart in unity consciousness. Visit newearth1.com.